So if you've been listening to this show, you know that I talk about my next guest book all the time, The Coaching Habit. I just got back from a 5-city tour in Canada, talking about the Mastering Overwhelm workshop. And over and over and over again, the conversation comes up with new leaders, new managers on how do they lead their people. They need a quick start. So I send them to Michael Bungay Stanier's The Coaching Habit. I send to them to the videos that he has with Marshall Goldsmith. And we just work through that first to get a really quick start. But he wrote a new book and it got me really fascinated. So I asked him to be on the show. And the book's called How to Begin. And it starts on the cover, which is really clever. The book starts now, right here on the cover. You know why? You know that you have more to contribute. You want to shake things up and make a difference for yourself and for the world. You want to learn and grow. You want to be a force for change. You are ready to begin. Open the book, start doing something that matters. So for me, I have conversation after conversation with people who know that they're up to a bigger game with the job, with careers, all in flux and everything really weird. They're like, time's running out. What am I going to do with myself? And they want to figure out a way to start. So Michael is the author of 7 books, which has sold over 1 million copies. The Coaching Habit, my favorite. But the new book, How to Begin, helps people to be more ambitious for themselves and for the world. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He plays the ukulele, which is really cool. We won't have him do it. He founded A Box of Crayons, which is a really amazing learning and development company that helps organizations move from advice-driven to curiosity-led leadership, which is, again, everything we preach. Michael, thank you for being here.
It is delightful to be back here. So thanks for the conversation, and thanks for being a champion for the work as well. I really appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. It makes everything I do easier if I can hand your book and those Marshall Goldsmith videos off to someone and say, come back after you've looked at that, then let's have a conversation. So it's been really great. So I'm curious, you've been writing a lot of coaching books, helping us in the world get better, change behaviors, change habits, that kind of thing. And then you decide to write a book about beginning. Why did you pivot to this?
Well, I was trying to write a different book. I was trying to write a book about behavior change. And, a lot of the stuff that I come back to is like, so how do you actually do some of this stuff? We're bombarded by self-helpy stuff or personal growth stuff or whatever you want to call it. But it boils down to is, so can you do things differently? And it turns out it's really hard to do things differently. We're creatures of habit. We're creatures of pattern. We like the familiar. We've got a lizard brain that for tens of thousands of years has kept us safe by going, don't do anything weird, don't do anything different, play it safe, keep within the boundaries. And we've got this paradox that we're wired to play it safe, and civilization and ourselves, we grow by stepping out to the edge of who we are and what we know and what we can do, and kind of transgressing and transversing that and going, now what? So I wrote a first draft, like 100 pages or something, and sent it out to a bunch of people. One of them called up almost immediately and went, this sucks, man. This is a terrible book. I don't even know what this book is about. It's like random letters and words put together. And slightly depressing, but I also have written enough books now to know my first drafts, like everybody's first drafts, tend to suck. So I'm like, okay, so
are you that self-actualized not to quit right there?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, okay, so that's good. I'm on the right path because my first draft is terrible. And going through that first draft and going, is anything here rescuable? There was one phrase that felt really potent to me, which was the phrase, we unlock our greatness by working on the hard things. And I'm like, that feels like a foundational truth towards meaning and impact and ongoing growth, is how do you figure out what your hard things are to take on so that you get to make the world a bit better and you get to unlock your greatness. I'm like, that's what I want to write about. So it became a book about a few things. It became a book about rethinking goals. This book led me to reconsider SMART goals, which I kind of nodded along to for 30 years, and then suddenly went, actually, I don't even know if SMART goals are they a good idea? Do they actually work? Does anybody really love SMART goals? I'm like, I'm yet to hear anybody go, smart goals are just the bee's knees. I love them. So
But we
it's
fall back on
rethinking
them all the
goals.
time. We fall back on it all the time because what
Yeah.
you're talking about takes some creative effort.
It feels to me that smart goals are one of those unexamined things that people go, if it's goals, do smart goals, because it's got to, I've been hearing about it for 30 years, so it must be true. And I'm like, is it? So it's kind of about goal setting, but really it's more about how do you be ambitious for yourself and for the world, hold that dual ambition, further yourself, but also contribute to the bigger picture, the bigger world. And in the end, behind that, it's really about how do you unlock your greatness by working on the hard things. So you can pick your level at which you want to play. Is it like you just want to get better at goals? Is it about understanding what you're up for in this world, so you have legacy, so you dare greatly, to use our Brené's lovely quote? Is it about unlocking your greatness, so you're committing to your own personal growth?
So why did you focus it on beginning? Like how to begin? Like you didn't write a book about how to get something done. You wrote how do I get the to the just to the starting line.
I wanted to make a promise that I could keep. And writing a book called How to Achieve Your Most Dream-Worthy Goals felt like BS. Like I don't even know how to do that for myself most of the time. How could I possibly promise that to somebody else? When you're taking on something, I mean, there's a place for how do you do small stuff and do it well. And that's why Atomic Habits has sold 8 trillion copies. It's like, here's how you hack and make productive and make focused your day by building the discipline to work on small stuff that matters to you, whether that's losing weight or working out or whatever it might be. And that's got its place. But I'm like, I want to talk about a bigger game. I don't want to talk about Atomic Habits. I want to talk about a worthy goal. And my goal is not to get people to a finish line, because I can't promise that. And because the finish line will shift as you're taking your journey. My goal is to get people across a threshold. It's like, if I can just get you started and give you a chance to keep going once you've got started, that feels like it would be a great success to me.
So when you say threshold, threshold isn't a euphemism for goal, end game. Threshold is how do I get you to just the first couple of steps in your journey?
Exactly. I mean, it's a nod to the hero's journey, which is, it's not the only structure about what's the journey of life, but it's a good one. And the hero's journey starts like this: the hero hears the call to adventure. The hero ignores the call to adventure. She goes, I don't want it's too la. Don't want that. The hero hears the call to adventure again. It's like, come on, you got to do this. The hero crosses the threshold, and once the hero crosses the threshold, the adventure really begins. And now she's down and towards the big thing. And can she wrestle with the big thing? Can she win the prize? Can she come back with the prize, a changed person, so that she can change her world? That's the basic arc. And I'm like, so that starting point, you hear the call to adventure, you resist it, you hear it again, you cross the threshold. I want you to more accurately hear the call to adventure. I want you to notice the resistance. I want you to cross the threshold.
So you structured the book in that fashion. For me, it did feel like exactly that. You start, the first section is set a worthy goal. Like, what is it that's really important enough for you to even step up to the plate? And then what I love is you test that, right? Because for me, what I learned, and the reason I wrote my book, is that I only ever do what I want to do, and I don't ever do what I don't want to do. And once I unlocked that secret, things started moving. And you actually have, like, I'm gonna go do this, and you say, well, let's hold on a second, let's check on that, if you're really up to that. Then you talk about commitment, right? Are you up for this, and what are the cost benefits? And then you talk about crossing the threshold. So you structured it in a way so that it is a hero's journey. Talk about that.
So when I'm writing a book, I spend a lot of time up front trying to figure out the structure. Like, I'm writing a book at the moment. It is literally due at the end of July. We're recording this on the 1st of July. So I've got 29 days to write it. And I haven't written very much of it because I'm still trying to figure out the structure of it. And I think I'm really getting close to the structure. And what I'm hoping, and this is probably magical thinking, is the writing will come fairly quickly once I have the structure in place. So with How to Begin, I mean, with the Coaching Habit, the book I'm best known for, if I'm known at all, I went through tens of versions of structure of that. Some of them I would write them out in full, and I'm like, not a very good version of a book. So I go back and really work it. And I think the reason it sold more than 1 million copies is not just that it unweirds coaching, but it has a really clean arc. It's
Oh
lean
yeah.
and it's elegant and it's beautiful. And even now I look at that book and I go, it's a pretty good book. It's not that, I don't, it's 6 years since I wrote that, and I'm like, it still holds up. I'm pretty proud of that.
Well, most of my
So
clients won't read.
yeah,
and they'll read, like, you can get through that, get the nuggets, feel like you got something, and walk, and move on.
it's designed for people who are like, I need something fast. And
Mm.
it's actually, I love hearing, because I've heard it before when people go, I don't normally read books, but this actually, I actually somehow read that. I'm not quite sure how you did that. And I'm like, I don't know either exactly, but it's fantastic that I pulled it off. So with How to Begin, I'm wrestling with the structure of it. And I knew that I wanted to be about crossing the threshold. So that became one section, one lump of play. And I knew one part was rethinking what goals were. And I came up with this idea that a goal should be thrilling and important and daunting. But more profound than I think those three threads coming together is I knew that you only get really good at your goal by drafting it and redrafting it. You've got to optimize so it has as much intrinsic and extrinsic motivation as possible, because if it's a worthy goal, something that is, amongst other things, daunting, you're always going to be looking to wriggle out of it. You're like, I want to do it, I don't want to do it. That they exist in proportions of 52-48. And you're like, okay, so how do I make sure 52 is I want to do it, not 52 is I don't want to do it?
That's
So you
me
got to
every
make
time
it.
just before I walk out on stage. Like, no matter how
Yeah,
many times I speak, just before I walk out on stage, I'm like, why did I commit to this?
exactly. Yeah,
Until I get
exactly. I
my
have those
first
moments as
breath
well.
out, and then I'm good.
Yeah. So I knew the first lump of clay was about how do you work and rework it to get closer to what the essence of the goal really is. Just like in the Coaching Habit book, one of the most powerful questions is, what's the real challenge here for you? The first chapter is a practical way of asking that same question around what the goal is. What's the real goal you want to be working on here? And here's how you test it and poke at it and prod it and find the soft spots and tighten things up so that you end up with a goal where you're like, this is pretty damn good. This is thrilling. It lights me up. It's important. It contributes to the bigger picture. It's daunting. It will take me to the edge of what I know and who I am. So I knew I wanted a chunk in the middle. And I was very influenced by the work of Bob Keegan and Lisa Leahy. They wrote a book called Immunity to Change. And
Another exercise I do all day, every day with
yeah,
everyone.
so, and I've trained with Bob and Lisa, and they owe an intellectual debt to Ron Heifetz, who wrote Leadership Without Leading or something like that. And he came up with this idea of technical change and adaptive change, which I use language called easy change and hard change around. And the basic insight is this: for easy change, we all know how to do that. And we do it all the time. We adjust and we adapt, and it's kind of additive. We learn a little something more, and we practice it, and we figure it out. And before you hit record on this, we were talking about kind of setting up our little studios. You got a fancy camera. I've got a couple of mics. And we both kind of learned this is what it means now to run a little studio in your home office. And we did that or at least I did that by watching YouTube videos and asking my friend Mark and getting some recommendations from Mitch around a good ring light and all that. And that's how I learned it. And I'm like, that type of change, actually, we do all the time and it's fine. Hard change is when knowing more stuff doesn't help you. And if you've ever had a New Year's resolution or something big where you're like, I want to be this, I want to do this, but you just can't crack it, and you're not entirely sure why there's this resistance, why you keep colluding with yourself to be slippery around this very thing that you want to be working on. That's more likely to
Exercising in
be
your 50s, right?
yeah,
Exercising in your 50s. I know exactly how to throw weights around a gym. I
yeah,
can't throw weights around a gym anymore. So I have to really think
yeah.
about this and be creative.
So some stuff is, it feels always elusive. How do you
Mm,
make that change happen? And the insight that comes from Heifetz and then Keegan and Leahy is, when you're dealing with hard change like this, you have commitments to the way things are right now
mm.
that are unspoken and invisible often, or half known. And until you understand what your commitment to the status quo is, it's hard to decide how to disrupt the status quo. Now, Bob and Lisa's work, they're academics, they're educational psychologists from Harvard, and their book is powerful but long and under edited and slightly complicated. And one of the things that I try and do is I try and take useful stuff and make it accessible and practical for people. So I'm like, the commit section it says this: you've found a worthy goal. It's thrilling, it's important and daunting. The temptation is just to launch into it. And if you do that, you increase the odds that you won't really get going on it. You'll abandon it quickly because you haven't yet weighed the cost of commitment. And the key insight is, you are far more committed to the status quo than you realize. So until you understand what you're getting from the way things are right now, before you take on your worthy goal, and then you understand what's at risk if you take on your worthy goal, until you understand that and weigh it up, your commitment isn't yet a full commitment. And this is a call to say, are you sure? Have you actually seen the consequences of you taking this on? Because I want you to take it on, but if you don't know what the consequences are, or you haven't thought it through, it's easier for you to give up. And I don't want you to give up for something as important as a goal that you've declared is thrilling and important and daunting for you.
We can fool ourselves over and over with that too. Of course I want this great new thing. Of course I want to make this difference. Like, who wouldn't want to do it? And if you don't get introspective about, well, kind of the person who's built this life doesn't want that.
Yeah. I'm going to just pick up on the word you use, we fool ourselves. And I'm like, I don't think I might try and seek a different word from that, which is like, when we say things like that, I really want this, and you haven't done this commit work, you're just not looking at the full picture yet. So you don't yet know what you don't yet know. And it's trying to do this work where you go, this commitment feels like it's made with my feet on the ground.
Mm.
And my understanding of reality just a little bit crisper and a little bit clearer.
I've always been jealous of people who like have a mission, have this vision, have this thing that they're just addicted to, like they're obsessed with, and they'll knock down every obstacle in the way, and they'll neglect other parts of their lives to get there. Because I think that's really cool. That's not most of us, right? People walk around going, I want to know my purpose in life. I want to know what my mission is. And my question always is what do you want? Right? Like, let's start with, what do you want? So when it's not that clear, that it doesn't come from a childhood wound that you're going to fix in the world and you're just obsessed with it, you really have to do this work to see if you're ready to build brick by brick that vision.
And I actually often think that, mission or vision, whatever word you want to use, kind of emerges from you doing work that is close to it. So I'm like, don't worry about what your mission is or your vision is so much. If you find a worthy goal that's thrilling, important, and daunting, and you do that, that's probably mission, purpose, focused work, even if you don't have the words for your mission and purpose yet. And if you do another one and then you do another one, you'll now be able to go, okay, I'm getting some clues as to what my purpose is here. It's this. Like, if you look at my body of work, it's clear that my mission is something around giving people powerful tools to be the best version of themselves, to be a force for change, to be more human with each other. And it doesn't really matter what that language is, but I've got a sense of the purpose I'm seeking to serve in the work that I do. And the fact that I've kind of done worthy goals for myself, as I would now call them, means that that sense of what really matters to me is emerging.
I'm going to be 60 in 3 weeks. I didn't know what my mission, my vision, my goal was until this year. I've been out doing stuff. I've been writing books. I've been, speaking and doing all this stuff. But while I've been out there, kind of doing these workshops and leading these groups of CEOs, it finally emerged to me what I actually care about, which is that people are actually free. You actually are free to create the life that you want to create. You've already created the life that you automatically wanted. Now there's a consciousness you can bring to it. I never knew I was free. And then when I found out, it was a big revelation. I want everybody else to know that. That was a complete shock to me. I didn't even know that that's what I cared about. Right. So it's an interesting thing.
That's interesting. In the Coaching Habit book, there's just a short section about the difference between wants and needs. And it lists 12 foundational human needs that I think Marshall Rosenberg, who's more famous for something called nonviolent communication, articulated. And I can't tell you what the 12 are off the top of my head, but I suspect that your mission, your vision is always going to be connected to one or two of those deep human needs. Because I know for sure that one of those is independence or freedom. And just you going, it's centered around freedom for myself, freedom for others. And I'm like, oh, I hadn't really figured it out before. But now I bet you one of the ways that you can figure out purpose is take a look at those 12 essential human needs. Pick 1, 2, 3, 4 that kind of resonate for you, which is like what matters for you here. Look at the work that you're doing where you feel this is the most powerful work that you could be doing, the projects that you're working on. And somewhere in between the abstract needs and the tactical work and projects lie the articulation of your purpose.
Fascinating. I'm gonna go find that. I'll put the link in the show notes for people.
I'm just making this up in the moment, so this may be complete and utter. This just may not be true. This may be just wrong. So everybody who's listening, just know there's an asterisk here going. This is more interesting watching Michael make stuff up rather than actually coming up with something that's actually real and useful.
Yes, always remember the first draft of the book sucked.
Yeah, exactly. First draft of something.
So I'm curious, now that the book's out for a while, what feedback are you getting on, one, the obstacles that people are still hitting, like they're reading the book, they're going through the exercises, which is really cool about the book, by the way. This book is a book about doing, like sit and actually do the exercises. By the time you get to the end of the book, you'll get to your threshold. That's the promise. But so what's the feedback? Like what are people hitting? And then what are the ahas?
I think one of the things that I'm noticing is one of the final chapters. In each of the 3 lumps that we talked about, each has 3 chapters in it, kind of 3 key teaching points. And in the final section around crossing the threshold, one of the teaching points is don't travel alone. This stuff is hard to do by yourself. Find the right people around you. And one of the things that we offer is a membership place where people can do their worthy goal. It's called the Conspiracy, and I'm trying to reclaim the word conspiracy. And I love the etymology of the word, because conspiracy means literally to breathe together. This idea of working together and breathing together feels like you've got the right people around you. And in the Conspiracy, people work in 6-week bursts. We call them chapters, and they work with a group of 4 other people. And they're kind of these autonomous little teams that figure out how to support and encourage each other. So we deliberately made it so I wasn't the hero of the Conspiracy, which is a temptation, because I wrote the book, and I'm a C-list celebrity, so you could put me at the center and go, here's Michael doing his thing. I'm like, it's not about me. It's about finding your people and finding the community around you to do the work. And so I think watching people do that work, just how wonderful it is when you find the right people around you who are, I get it, I get you, and I will encourage you. I think one of the insights around that is, and this kind of connects to what I think good coaching is, because in some ways the conspiracy is a version of coaching, just less expensive than hiring an actual coach for yourself. You've got a slightly more diverse, dispersed form of support. It's just kind of the power of actually being a little fierce about it as well. It's not just kindness, it's fierceness at the same time. So once a month, I run a live session at the Conspiracy, and I either do some teaching or I do some coaching. And I was coaching one of the people, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm really getting trapped into my perfectionism," and I'm like, "That's great, because that's something that a lot of people are nodding their head to." And she's like, "And so I think I'd really like to kind of talk through my perfectionism and try and figure out what the perfectionism thing is all about." And I was like, how about we don't talk about your perfectionism? Because I think talking about your perfectionism is some version of perfectionism, which is like, oh, I've got to fully understand perfectionism before I can stop being. And I'm like, you know what? How about I apply some heat and just get you to do some stuff? So she wanted to get something posted on something, and I was like, so we've got 5 minutes. Can you post something for me right now live? And she's like, no.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, that's okay. And then I'm like, okay, so could you post something in the next, 2 hours? And she's like, well, I'm just about to go on vacation. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I'm like, so what if we set a deadline soon around posting something, and we make something at stake if you don't get it done? I'm like, you have to give me $500, or you can choose. You can either give it to me and I'll donate it somewhere, or you have to donate $500 to a charity that you are opposed to. And she was American, so I'm like, if you're a Republican, you have to donate to the Democrats, and if you're the Democrats, you have to. And I'm like, I'm sure this is terrible that I'm stirring partisan politics.
Oh, dude, it's stirred. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's a minor contribution, I think, to the partisan divide in the US at the moment. And she's like, okay, I'm sweating now. And so we set up a time. She has to post it in the next little bit. There's a consequence for her not doing it. And it was just the recognition that sometimes what you need is somebody with a hand on the small of your back pushing you forward. It's like, look, this hand is both a support and it's an irresistible nudge. And I think, I'm just picking one of the insights I could be sharing around this, but that feels helpful. And, if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, I'm up for something, I am ambitious, what I'd be asking yourself is, so who is around you? And you need some support that is caring and nurturing and loving and enveloping. And you need some support that is, get a backbone, stop moping around, get out and start doing it. And if you're lucky, you get the right push at the right time, you get the right hug at the right time.
I don't know how anybody does it alone. I have a group of coaches, this 4 of us that meet every Friday at 2:00 for the last 6 years.
Nice.
We don't have a commitment. We don't have it, but we're busy, and we all show up no matter where we are in the world. And we talk about our businesses. We talk about our lives. We talk about everything, and we push each other to, and support.
Let me ask you, because this is cool. How do you keep this fresh?
I have no idea. It's really an uncanny thing. It happened organically. Like we don't say we have to be there. We don't cajole it, and we don't miss. Right. One person is going to miss today because she's on a plane to the UK while we're meeting, but we don't miss. And we get so much value out of it. We get so much love out of it. Here's how it stays fresh. We're so committed to each other's success in business. We're so committed to each other's success in our personal lives, in our spiritual lives, right? We know each other's sex lives. We know each other's bottom line as far as business is concerned. So we're so fiercely committed, so it gets we'll get contentious and sweaty sometimes, right? So it's always real. I think if any of us were bored, we'd stop.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was the Conspiracy is in some ways an attempt to replicate a mastermind group I was in for 15 years. And you know what? There were 4 times we found us, and maybe more, we found ourselves, we just got stuck in a bit of a groove, and we were just going through the motions a little bit, and it kind of needed a shake up to get us back to ourselves. And I also found that who am I'm a slippery character. I'm very good at showing up for other people and pushing them and nudging them, but I'm also very good at kind of doing misdirection. So I'm never quite talking about who I am, or making sure that we run out of time just before my turn or whatever it might be. So do you have any guidance on how you hold yourself to something that is daunting and important to you when you have evolved a wide range of skills to avoid that, as whilst you want it at the same time? Asking for a friend, obviously.
I'll tell you truthfully, because I have people in my life who know my game. I have people in my life who know the games I run, and they'll say, looks like you're running that game. Let's check on you. Right. And so it's uncanny. I have both an accountability partner who I'm afraid of. She's afraid of me and I'm afraid of her. And we talk every Monday morning, right? Her skills is sales. I'm a rabid introvert. So I'll never talk to anybody except for my clients if I ever have to. Right. So I have people who absolutely know my game, and I make sure they're in my life.
And how do you articulate your game? Like when you're working with your accountability person and you say to her, this is what you got to watch for. How do you figure out what that is, and then how do you articulate
I
it?
actually don't. I pick someone who says, oh, this is what I have to watch for. I've now been doing this with you for 6 months. I have noticed 3 times you've said this, and that meant fuck all. And so do you mean it or don't you? Because don't waste my time. Like I pick people who I don't have to, they see my game. Right.
Nice. So the job is, I want you to start noticing the games that I run so that I can know what my games are and that you can call me on the games.
Right. And there's occasion, because I'm charming, like you, like I'm charming and slippery, and I'm a coach, so I'm practiced. So I I do have to tell on myself, and I have an agreement in my coaching agreement. Like if you're not authentic in the moment, when you catch yourself not being authentic, can you come back and tell on yourself? Right. That's one of the agreements I have with my clients. And I do that. I try and do that with myself also.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. It's really helpful to understand your own patterns of misdirection and slipperiness. Because if you can see that and tell on yourself and train others to notice it as well, you're just building a really strong form of encouragement to help you kind of step forward.
Definitely. So I'm curious, if people want to join the conspiracy, I didn't see any links to that. How would they find that?
Yeah, we open it 3 times a year, and the kind of prerequisite is a course that is connected to the book called How to Begin. So you can either get hold of the book either in your library or buy a copy if you want to do that. You can go to the mbs.works website and you'll find the How to Begin course, and it's not super expensive. It's like less than $100, and there's a very easy an easy code you can find that gives you $20 off that.
Oh man.
So if you take that course, and it's good, it's like 3 hours of high good quality videos and me specifically walking you through the process step by step. If you've taken the course, then you'll be told about the conspiracy and invited to join that 3 times a year if you're interested.
Awesome. And I'll put all those links in the show notes. Last question. I'm curious. So what's on your plate that's scaring you? What's daunting and big and hairy and audacious?
Yeah, I'd say there are 2 related but different things. The most specific immediate thing is I have a book due in 30 days. And I've got a structure for it, I think, but I don't have very many words written. And I'm being my very slippery self around not getting that written at the moment. So that is something that's sort of immediate. And then the bigger question I'm asking myself is, what does a life as a writer look like? Now, as you said in the introduction, I've written books, but I think that makes me an author. But I wouldn't call myself a writer. I do a whole bunch of other things, and the writing gets squeezed in around that. And the deeper challenge beyond writing the next book is actually becoming a writer, so that writing becomes central to what I do, or creating becomes central to what I do.
Well, you've got the foundation for that, and and have built the following. It's kind of amazing. I want to thank you for being a mentor and a role model for me. I have very few, and I just really appreciate you showing me the way to do it with humility and humor, as well as power. I'm a better coach because I have followed what you've taught. So thank you.
Mark, thank you. That's so nice to hear.
Everybody else, I just so appreciate your time and your attention. I hope you learned something today. All of the links will be in the show notes, so you can follow Michael wherever he goes. I thank you for your time and attention. I love you. Have a great rest of the day.